My guess would be that every single one of us in this conversation who's working a job right now knows exactly what the things are that we could do if we wanted to get fired instantly. And I don't just mean like salacious, crimey stuff. Obviously, that's always going to get you fired. I mean stuff that runs directly counter to the point and the purpose and the values of your business. Pretty much everybody at any healthy business is going to know, hey, we exist to do this, and there's a lot of things we can tolerate around here, but if you do this, yeah, we can't tolerate that. That's instantly fired. I think that all of the employees of the central imperial government in all ancient empires had a real clear sense of this as well. There's a lot of things you could screw up, and there might be a little bit of leeway or grace on that, but there are a couple things that, look, if you want to keep your job as a provincial administrator in an ancient empire, you better get these things right. Thing number one, make sure the tax equation is right side up. These ancient empires like Persia or Rome, they gave their regional governors a lot of authority to get taxes however you need to get them. Remember Matthew from the New Testament? And what the kind of leash that he had to go and just make things up. Your taxes this year are 100. That's how much. Wait, how did you come up with that number? Because I have this badge. It is 100. And the central government, they didn't care very much about those kind of abuses as long as it didn't go so far that you get people riled up and violent. And I suppose that's the second thing. So the first thing that you can't get wrong if you're the governor of an ancient province is you got to get more taxes than it takes to cover your costs. There needs to be money always flowing back to the home office. If not, the king or the emperor is going to get somebody who can get that done. The second thing is no rebellions. So you can push those taxes as hard as you want, but you better have your finger on the pulse of that local populace, because if they go into rebellion and we have to call in the forces, the reserves, that is very expensive. That is a big hassle. And like we talked about the other day, a little yeast works through the whole dough. That idea of rebellion, that is contagious. We can't have that in any of our provinces. Like I said, it's the same deal for any of these ancient empires. Governors who were viewed as successful kept peace and stability and kicked back a whole bunch of money to the royal treasury all the time without a lot of drama. If you violated that, you're going to get canned, and to get canned from that kind of job is pretty consequential for you and your family and even your prospects of continuing to be alive. So everybody knows this in the book of Nehemiah when somebody shows up to be a guest provincial governor. And that's effectively what Nehemiah is in this situation. He shrewdly requested all the paperwork back on the front end in his royal throne room conversation with Artaxerxes and Artaxerxes' wife. He has got the full faith and credit, the full vouch of the king. He is going to sink or swim on his own decision-making here in Jerusalem with this rebuilding project. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the timeline here, but the timeline in Nehemiah is short. He just got there by the time we're in Nehemiah chapter 4, and he's only been running this thing for a matter of days, really, at this point. So as a temporary governor, he knows this thing really, it can't get too expensive, but most of all, we can't have some kind of gigantic rebellion where I just wanted to go rebuild a wall, and now my king, my friend, the guy for whom I'm the cupbearer, the king who put his neck on the line for me and took a big risk on me, now he has to send the army and he's got rebellion on his hands. That is the one outcome that Nehemiah cannot abide. Yet the sabers are rattling and things are ratcheting up. The political energy here is going from potential to kinetic, and that is very bad for Nehemiah. Well, guess what? Sanballat and his buddies know that. If they create chaos and blood is shed, and even open warfare were to occur, even if they lose, they kind of win, because Nehemiah will go away and no king of Persia is ever going to take a chance on this building project again. Chaos benefits Sanballat at this point, not Nehemiah. And so it's clear that a big part of Nehemiah's strategy with all of this is just get in, get the thing built, get it done, and go home. We're done. All we need is the wall and the gates, and the problem will be solved. But Sanballat is ramping up the rhetoric and moving toward violence quicker than Nehemiah can build the wall. Nehemiah 4, verse 7. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. Remember, if that happens, they win, whether they ultimately win on the battlefield or not. Verse 9, but we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there's so much rubble that we can't rebuild the wall. Also, our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we'll be right there among them, and we'll kill them and put an end to the work. Then the Jews who lived near them came over and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. So what's Nehemiah to do? He has the full faith and credit of the throne. He could just put the wall thing on hold, marshal troops, and slaughter these people, and probably Artaxerxes would have his back. Maybe? But then forever, the narrative could be that this really is a people group in rebellion. This really is a people group who are quick to do violence and want to cause chaos to the empire. It's better if Nehemiah assumes a defensive position to complete the building of these defensive walls without having this thing go full hot war. But at the same time, if he doesn't engage with the threat in some kind of meaningful way, the will of the laborers is going to go out, and then this whole thing is a failure, egg on his face, egg on Artaxerxes' face, and maybe it empowers rebellion now that Sanballat and his ilk realize how fragile the Persian hold is on Jerusalem, and this area really is a very precarious spot for a guy whose only two jobs are make sure the economics are right side up and don't have a rebellion. Verse 13, here's what he does. Therefore I, Nehemiah, stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places. Okay, well, that's again a defensive positioning, a defensive maneuver. We're going to protect the places that are most vulnerable, and as we read on, we're going to protect the people who are most vulnerable, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. Okay, well, when you know what they're armed with, that tells you that they're taking it seriously. This isn't just daggers on your hip while you're working on things. They're actual military men with the full complement of the weapons of war loaded up in these places. And it's worth noting that 2 of these 3 weapons would primarily be useful in that environment for defensive purposes, spears being the most defensive of the 3, bows doing a good job of holding people at bay, swords being the equivalent of your modern sidearm that you reach for when everything else hasn't worked out. Verse 14, after I, Nehemiah, looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, oh dang, we're getting a speech here. Yeah, we're going to straight up stand up in front of everybody. This isn't a prayer. This isn't a back and forth correspondence with Sanballat. He's doing the thing in the movie where the leader rises and stands in front of everyone and encourages people and rides up and down the ranks clanking swords. It's that kind of a moment. What's he going to say? Don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. Well, dang, that was pretty good. It was also very concise. I don't think that's just some kind of hollow exposition to be like, oh, just don't worry about it. No, clearly Nehemiah is worried about it, but he's taken steps to thwart what their enemies might do. But more so, look at the heart of the encouragement. It's not about the swords and the bows and all of that. That's there. But remember the Lord who is great and awesome. Well, there you have it. Remember, Nehemiah and Ezra were men steeped in the story of what we call the Old Testament, the story of redemption. Nehemiah isn't just making stuff up here. Every time he makes a decision, every time he prays, remember, it's rooted in stuff God has said in other parts of the Bible, through the prophets, or explicitly through his own voice to Moses. Nehemiah is looking at the grand scheme of history, and he's saying God is real. God has a special place in his heart and a special purpose for us at this time, and we are doing stuff that is in keeping with God's grand redemptive plan and the unique purpose that he has for us at this time. So it's one thing to say, I just believe it's going to work out. Come on, guys, rally together, rally to me, or whatever. But Nehemiah is pointing to something much, much bigger, the kind of thing that even for the person who's wobbly in their belief, is going to be very bolstering to their courage. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome. That phrase alone is going to conjure memories of the Red Sea parting. It's going to conjure memories of the earth opening up and swallowing up the enemies of what was true and right. It's going to conjure recollections of trumpets taking down the walls of Jericho. God is bigger than walls. God is bigger than our enemies. God is more powerful than all of this. And Nehemiah believes that they are on track with what God would have them do. And his final exhortation is to say, you're fighting for yourselves, you're fighting for your lives. And fight in this context, I don't think it even just means stab people with swords and have spears and stuff. I think it also means build the wall. The wall building is a fight. Being a thinker and a doer in this environment is the fight, and you are winning the fight. Look how much ground we've taken. Keep doing this. Do it for the glory of God and in obedience to God, and also do it for all of the people you love and everything that you value and call home. That's a pretty good speech for a guy who's under all kinds of pressure from sophisticated enemies who understand the prime directive of a provincial governor. Nehemiah cannot come out here and ruin the economics of it. He cannot come out here and have it spiral into full-blown rebellious chaos. And so his strategy for making it better is, one, practical positioning of guards and soldiers to discourage the attack. Two, don't go out in the open offensive if you can help it. We're going to sit back and play defense at this point. It is strategically shrewd. Three, appeal to the grand narrative of history and how clearly located in the center stream of God's redemptive plan this work is in Nehemiah's understanding. And four, appeal to the people to say, do it for God, do it for each other, do it for yourselves. The enemy is real, but don't lose heart. Keep fighting. And in doing so, Nehemiah has preserved the stability of the situation, fulfilled his role as a representative of the throne in the situation, and he's avoided being baited into a passionate, stupid mistake. We'll see how all of that works out next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.